Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the City of Sebastian Planning and Zoning Commission and Local Planning Agency meeting of Thursday, August 6, 2020. I'd like everybody to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry, I apologize. No? That is correct. I was going to ask for roll call before Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'll get back to order now. Roll call, please. Do we have a...
She's there. She's trying to unmute.
Okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't get it unmuted. Mr. Roth.
Mr. Roth is not here yet.
Oh, okay. Mr. Simmons.
Present.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Here.
No?
Here.
Mr. Oh, okay. Mr. Reyes?
Here.
Mr. Kizelbosch?
Here.
Mr. Eugen?
Here.
Mr. Alvarez?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those special announcements tonight, Mr. Cristino and Mr. Carter are excused from tonight's meeting. Ms. Cottenberg will be voting for Mr. Carter as an alternate member. And I assume Mr. Roth may be running late. He may show up here. So. I'd also like to request an agenda modification to move the accessory structure in front of the review of capital improvement program. Like a vote from the commissioners.
A second. Yes.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. We'll take a verbal vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye. Yes, aye.
Those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion passes to make the changes to the agenda.
Yeah, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir?
City Attorney? Yeah, I'm on Zoom. I'm on vacation. I apologize, but I want to come in. Just make sure the record reflects that was a unanimous decision.
I apologize, but I didn't catch all that. Who are we speaking with?
Manny Anand, the city attorney. I'm on Zoom.
Mr. Lyon, I can see you now. I recognize the face.
I just want, yeah, I'm on vacation. I apologize, but I want to be a part of the meeting, so that's why I'm zooming in. Just make sure the record reflects, because I know we did it by yeas or nays, that it was unanimous, which is required. That's all I wanted to say.
I will. Thank you for that. Would the clerk take care of that? Make sure it is on the record that there was a vote, a yea or nay, for the changes to the agenda?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda would be approval of the minutes. Seeing none, we'll move on. There is no quasi-judicial hearing or public hearing today. As far as unfinished business, we have tabled the comprehensive plan element. Correct? For tonight's meeting?
You did finish all of them last meeting, so.
Okay.
That was only if you needed to table.
If we didn't finish the housing, we were going to move it to this meeting, but you finished all three elements last week. So because you were handed the agenda last week, we had just put that on in case we needed to. But you're okay, there was nothing tabled.
There is more elements coming to us?
Yes, at the August 20th, you'll have the two other elements there by your chair already.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is any public input to tonight's items. Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. The new business will be the accessory structure review of the LDC section 54-2-7.5 This is for an accessory structure at 402 Quarry Lane, 999 square feet, detached garage, 27 foot by 37 foot. Mr. Thomas Cluse, you come up and make your, tell us a little bit about your project, and then we'll ask the city to give us their findings on it, please.
We just wanted a garage to put a boat and a truck in,
Okay,
and that's it.
Simple as that.
We have more yard, and we want to put some trees in.
okay. Thank you very much. City?
So staff has went through its report. The accessory structure as proposed meets all the requirements. Some additional considerations for the commissioner's disposition would be that the applicant will need to amend the building permit to reflect a metal roof to match the roof on the existing home. Garage shall need to be painted to match the existing home. Applicant shall keep and maintain a minimum of 15 trees on the property, and perimeter landscaping will be required around the proposed garage, and a $100 review fee will be required prior to issuance of a building permit. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Okay, thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions? We'll start over here with Mr. Alvarez.
I have none. I'm okay.
Mr. Kisselbosch.
Yes. I have question both for the height of the house and the structure. Who come up with that number, 22 feet for the house? 24 feet for the house and 1810 for the structure. How they come up with the number?
So the 18-foot 10-inch is actually a dimension on the plan set, and the
That's from the elevation, garage elevation, and to the top of the roof.
it's from the finished floor elevation to the top of the roof. That's correct.
Okay, what about the house?
The house is was measured from the finished floor elevation of 23.7, and it was a function of the roof slope, and it was measured off the original 1994 plan.
I think that's 24 is a wrong number. The house is not that tall, not any house in Sebastian that tall. Okay? So, can I ask, what's the ceiling height in your bedroom? Can you tell me that thing? What is, huh? 9.4?
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. 9.4, and that is sitting 4 feet high from the street. Okay? Survey show that's engraved. So that's a 13.4. Okay? Then the house has a pitch of 512.
So,
It's 37 feet total width of side of the house. When you do that pitch, you come 7.5 feet more on 9.4. So that's 16.4, and that's 17, and plus 4, that's a 21. Okay, so when you add the structure from the garage structure from the street, that's a 22 feet. So that structure is higher than the house.
but it should be noted that even at 22 feet, the principal structure is higher than the proposed accessory structure.
I'm coming that main house is 21 feet tall, not 24 feet. And the structure is 22 feet tall, the garage structure. So garage structure is 1 foot higher than the house. So what would be the situation when a garage structure is higher? They have to apply for the exemption or something? What they do? I know some of the garage structure are higher than the house, but in this case,
We don't feel that the garage structure will be higher than the house. The finished floor elevation of the garage is 1.7 feet below the finished floor of the existing home. So even at 21 feet.
it doesn't matter. The drawing shows that elevation of the garage is 1810, just from the finished floor of the garage.
Correct.
Then you add 3 feet from the street, which is actually 3 feet 2 inches, that actually become 22 feet.
I think you're requesting not to follow that 3 feet rule on this. Is that correct?
No, it's accessory to
If you
the-
don't follow 3 foot rule, then why you follow the height of the house from the street?
We, the rule is that the accessory structure would have to be subordinate to the principal structure.
Well,
Regardless of where
my
the finished
concern is
floor
the height of the
elevations-
garage and the height of the house. It doesn't matter which rule you apply. Garage will be sitting higher than the house. So that's my concern is.
So the commission could make a recommendation that we verify that the accessory structure roof height remain lower than the principal structure. If that's,
How they could do, if they do that 11 feet, 4 feet tall garage structure with 612 pitch, how are they gonna reduce the height? Unless they change the pitch,
or change the finished floor elevation,
or change the finished floor.
which is 1.7 feet below the principal
Yeah.
structure.
Yeah. But the number 24 in your finding, 24 feet tall house, elevation for that is wrong. So you have to verify that first. There should be drawing in the building department, you can verify from there.
And we reviewed that.
That's my only concern.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzenboss. Mr. Hugan.
Yeah, I have one question. I'm looking at the sheet that has the trees on it, and according to what I read, there's supposed to be 15 trees, and I only count 10. So either I'm not seeing something, or it says there's existing trees, right? You have to have 15 total. Where
Lots unified now, that's one great big lot.
You have to be on microphone, sir.
I'm sorry, please come up to a microphone.
Sorry.
You might want to hang out there for a minute in case I have some more questions for you.
All right. Aren't they talking the lot, meaning the unified lot, the two lots combined?
Right.
Well, there's way more than 20 trees on it.
Okay, well, I was just going by this plan that was submitted with all the red dots on it. And I'm showing 10 existing trees. So I don't know where the other 5 are at. That's what I'm questioning.
If you're looking at the red marks on the landscape plan, if you look on the bottom of lot 17, we do show 15 trees on that plan. If you count the palms in the front of the
So
existing.
all the red circles then are trees?
Correct.
Okay, it's not just the ones that show the tree?
No, no.
It's not- okay, all right, I got it. Okay, then we're good. We're good. Thank you. I'm done.
So there's 19 shown plus the screening around the garage.
Right.
And that's all existing trees other than the screening around the garage, I'm assuming. Ms. Cottenberg.
I have no questions, thank you.
Mr. Simmons?
I do have one question. Is there, what you're building is there anything inside of it? Is it just, I mean, I just noticed that, it's like 65,000 as far as the construction. Is there anything inside of the building itself? Is it totally empty?
Just a shell.
Just a shell. Okay, thank you.
No other questions, Mr. Simmons?
That's it.
I have no questions. I think most of the questions have been asked. There is some concern about the height of the structure, the proposed structure.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
this is a city attorney. Why don't we pose a question to the applicant about the home? He should know if the proposed structure is higher than the house, since he lives there.
I can ask that. I'm sure he's heard us speaking about it. That sometimes can be a technical question based on doing some measurements between the pitch on a roof and then the structure height itself and then from the road. But are you planning on having your structure roofs equal or one higher than the other?
I thought the garage was about a foot lower.
That's the exact number that I have, that the garage
Okay.
height is a foot lower.
Mr. Arnone, he mentions that
We didn't know if the elevation, if we'd have to raise the lot
Slab.
a little more, the elevation of it.
Okay.
I'm
No,
satisfied.
you cannot raise the lot because it'll be more high. When you put more dirt in your lot, your structure will be more high. Okay? So that's the main concern there. So either you change the pitch of the garage, okay, bring it 1 foot lower, or the community department will check with the building department the height of the house. They should have prints of the house. My concern is the 24 number in your finding is number F. You say the house height is 24 feet. That's my concern. It's not 24 feet. It's somewhere 21 feet, a few inches. And the garage is coming 22 feet.
So your plus or minus is
Yeah,
more than 3 feet there.
yeah. So you are.
Approximately, it's usually a little
With your
closer.
drawing, what I'm looking here, your structure is about 1 foot higher than the house. That's my concern is.
For the commission's consideration, we could put a provision that we can look at the finished floor elevation of the home and the height of the home against the proposed garage and the finished floor of the garage, and mandate that the garage come at or under the height of the home.
I don't know that we need to go that far into it. I think with your review of your calculations there, because if it doesn't add up, then he may need a variance to be below the 3 feet above the center line, or some type of change. I mean, you're saying approximate in your findings there. I'm gonna just hold it at that and hope that your
We can certainly check and
your
verify.
department, building department will look into that. We just don't want them to have an odd-looking structure there,
Understood.
or to be out of code compliance, so.
Well, if you change the pitch of the garage 512 instead of 612, you will almost even with the house. You'll be fine that way.
Couldn't somebody just go out and measure from the ground to the top of the house? I mean, that would be the simplest way to do it.
No, they have the drawings. The building department has the drawings.
Well,
Yeah, building department
yeah,
has
but
the plans.
they're, well, okay.
Building department has the
Yeah,
plan of the
I
house.
don't think we need an as-built of it, but that's okay, good recommend. So at this point, I think I'll just look for a motion, and if somebody would like to add something to that motion in reference to that, that'd be fine. So I'm looking for a motion from the commissioners to approve the accessory structure.
My question is to you, Dory and Robert. There are some garage higher than the house. How they got that built? How they got special variance on that? How the?
Are we talking about this structure?
Some of the garage taller than the house. So
Mr. Point of order, city attorney, point of order.
Okay?
I think the chair is calling the question. I think the time for the discussion is over, unless the chair wants to withdraw and allow more discussions. But right now, the question was called.
I'll withdraw my motion to ask for a motion, and I'm gonna let Dory speak in reference to the question. Does that work, Mr. Arnone?
Yes, sir, thank you.
So I just wanted to remind that in the past, we have had, the code had stated that the roof ridge line of the accessory structure can't be higher than the house. And we have had some scenarios and applications before you in the past where because of the grade difference on the second lot, there has been a little wiggle room. So as I'm looking at the grades, and if we use I believe Robert scaled the drawings from the garage, and if we leave them and verify that they're 1810, what that basically means is that the house, and we will verify the height of the house, it can be 17 feet. And if the house is at 17 feet with the grade elevation, you've got that visual where the two structures are going to be the same. And in the past, we have approved those type of structures. So if you wanted to put together some sort of motion that said, after verification that the house is not higher than 17 feet, then you're approving this application. Otherwise, that is correct, though. There would need to be either a variance, or they would need to adjust the roof pitch to the garage to make sure that visually they were the same height, if that works out as a solution.
Yeah, the 24 feet number here in your finding is wrong, but even including from the street level, so.
Now, if it turns out that the house is 18 feet, we're meeting code, because there's a grade elevation, and even visually, the accessory structure is going to be shorter than the house. So I was just trying to think of a way you could craft that motion so that we're not necessarily holding up this application, but we'll verify some figures. And I don't see a scenario where we'd need a variance or anything.
What I'm calculating with my number, looking at this thing there, and house come there is 17 feet, and it's sitting 4 feet high from the street, that's 21 feet.
Well, we've never used the street elevations in calculation or determining if this was higher than the house. We've always used just where the pad of the house is up to the roof ridge line.
Then 24 feet is way high there instead of 17 feet there.
We'll verify that figure, but we have this 7-foot wiggle room that at least for the house to be 7 feet versus the 24 that's in the staff report.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to be okay based on the pictures of the house. It's going to be very close, but I think visually you're not going to get an accessory structure that's higher than the house.
No, I'm not against for the structure or anything there. I'm just questioning, thinking why 24 feet that high? Not a single house in Sebastian that tall. So I just want to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, I'll close the discussion and look for a motion to approve the accessory structure at 402 Quarry Lane.
I'll give it a try. I move that we approve the structure at 402 Quarry Lane, subject to the 4 elements indicated as staff recommendations, with the verification that the actual height of the house from the concrete pad is not greater than 17 feet.
Or meets the code.
Pardon me?
I'm just saying, or meets the code, make sure that we meet the code. The city attorney saying that.
Code.
As he said.
I second.
And we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Public input, you need to ask, even though there's nobody here.
I apologize. Would anybody from the public wish to speak in reference to this project? Hearing none, we'll move forward. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Before I take the roll call, who made the second? Was it Mr. Eugen?
Mr. Kisselbosch.
Mr. Kisselbosch, okay, thank you. All right, now for the roll call. Mr. Eugen?
Yes.
Mr. Kisselbosch?
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Roth? Oh, he's not there. Okay. Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez?
Yes.
Mr. Reyes?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good luck with your project. Moving on to our next item on the agenda. We have the review of the capital improvement program and capital outlays greater than $50,000. I believe we have a presentation. Ken?
Good evening. It's good to be here. Every year I present the capital improvement program, try to give you some idea of the major items that are proposed. I gave you a lot of detail in the agenda backup materials, project by project. This was originally composed by staff, and at this point, we haven't really changed our recommendations. It will go to the City Council on August 26th to go through the entire budget, including the capital program. And then they have their public hearings on September 14th and the 23rd. So it's been reviewed by the Budget Advisory Committee. They had no items of particular comment. And of course, staff, develops this based on what we know we can afford and what we think are the operational needs of the city. In categorizing the major expenditures, broken down as far as general government for technology additions and upgrades, we're spending like over $900,000 over the 5-year period. In the police department, we are able to fund the vehicle replacements each year using discretionary sales tax funds, and we do buy some equipment out of the general fund for the police department. This year, the community development department did submit a number of new projects that they've been working on. The Harrison Street Park Plaza, additional work at the working waterfront, projects to improve the landscaping and irrigation at the Riverview Park, so that hopefully to protect the trees. $16,500 for equipment to, in support of the sustainable Sebastian objectives. We've got $600,000 over those years for the septic to sewer program. That's matched 50-50 between the Lagoon Council and CRA funds. We plan to do a lot of work on roads altogether between road resurfacing and reconstruction and sidewalk replacements. You see there's about $4.5 million that will be spent. And of course, we replace the heavy equipment needed for maintaining the roads. What we call the Public Facilities Department, that includes your city garage, the fleet division, the cemetery, and the maintenance division. A bit more work being done at the cemetery over the years. Most of that's being funded by the Cemetery Trust Fund. We are adding additional funds to complete the Public Works compound based on our preliminary design process that is going on. And there's some maintenance equipment. I think it does include a vehicle there and the storage shed. Sorry, I missed there. Quite a bit of money allocated to the stormwater division. The master plan, $200,000. We hope to get some grant funding and really do a better job of what we've had to date as far as stormwater master planning. Quite a bit of funding for whatever is decided as far as keeping the canals improved and restored. Tulip Drive road crossing, Bayfront road crossing, and Ocean Cove drainage. Some funds being spent there. All these funds would be either out of the stormwater fees with some help on slip lining and canal restoration from the discretionary sales tax funds. As far as our enterprise funds, the golf course has some equipment being replaced and irrigation software technology. The building fund is, building department's gonna improve their front counter with some renovations. A lot planned for the airport. As you're probably aware, we get a substantial amount of funds from the FAA and the Florida Department of Transportation. We match those dollars with our local share with the discretionary sales tax funds. Of note, I think, is the economic development hangar, which would be another hangar facility out there that would help with our rental income and helps the airport stay in better financial shape than it's been in the past. In previous years, I've also developed or presented this chart. There's not a lot that is different in terms of the sources of funds. We still get a lot of our funding from discretionary sales taxes, grant funding, the local option gas tax, and stormwater fund. And that's where the money's being appropriated for, the stormwater system, mostly the airport, as far as enterprise funds, street and sidewalk improvements, public works compound, and the other items you see there. I think it's important that we are planning over this next capital improvement program period, $27,641,000. That compares well with what we funded last year. Last year, the total funding was $23,240,000. So I think it's important to Sebastian and our, it's good economic sense for in these times to be investing in projects that create commercial activity and jobs. So it's, even though we are wrestling as a staff and as a city council and the budget committee to balance the operating budgets of the city because of these special revenue funds, the discretionary sales taxes, the stormwater fees, we are able to hopefully crank up the economy. So I think that's a very positive thing, and we hope it, after any discussion or questions I can answer for you, that you'll pass a motion. I think it's outlined in the agenda, either to approve as is or to amend it for any changes you want recommended to the city council.
Thank you, sir. We'll start with the commissioners. Questions, Mr. Alvarez?
No, not at this time.
Mr. Kissenbosch?
No, I don't have it.
Mr. Hugan?
Yes, I have a few. There's one, there's an item here called, yes, I just turned it on, audio visual equipment. And at the bottom it says $75,000 for the year 2021. And then at the bottom it says a quote for the purchase was received from Encore Broadcast Solutions, an option to subscribe to service based on $130 an hour. So are we going to buy the equipment, or are we going to go with the $130? I'm confused there.
Okay. I'll let Barbara address it.
It's a Scrivener's error. We are actually buying the equipment outright.
Okay. Okay, and then my next question is, what is the graphic wrap that goes around the vehicles? Is that ghost car thing? It says COPE vehicle graphic wrap. It's on the maybe the third page.
Road Patrol Division.
Oh, Road Patrol Division. And it's $5,000 for 2021. What is that?
That's with the community-oriented policing. I think they have a special insignia representing that's what that vehicle is.
Okay, like the city of Sebastian or,
yes.
Okay. Bear with me here. Okay, under Leisure Services Department, there's a price to replace a vehicle for $16,000 and a price to replace a mower for $13,000. That doesn't seem like much difference between a mower and a vehicle. And I don't know why the mower would cost. There's no page numbers on these, so I can't tell you what page. It says Leisure Services Department up at the top. Oh, it's continued from the page in front of it.
So I'm seeing the Parks Division vehicle. Is that part of your
Right,
question?
it says 2021 replace mower for $13,000 and then purchase a utility vehicle for $16,000. I'm just wondering why the mower costs almost as much as the vehicle.
Well, these are the large mowers they use like at the parks and, for large-scale mowing. And the vehicle is actually a utility cart type of thing.
Okay.
Like a souped-up golf cart.
Okay, but they are the big mowers then?
Yes, they are.
Okay, one final question I have is, there's some items in here for canal, restore the canal sides and bottom, and there's another one for seawalls. Don't those canals belong to the Water Management District? And don't they take care of them?
They're our responsibility, I believe, to.
They are our
maintain.
responsibility?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Ms. Koppenberg.
I have no question.
Mr. Simmons.
I do have a couple. It's partly just to educate me.
Okay.
What's the definition of operating impact? Like if we look at the public facilities compound, where you have all the negative numbers.
What I do, I have some formulas set up that if I'm buying a piece of equipment, like a vehicle or just office piece of machinery, then I figure, well, we assign a useful life of 5 years. If it's something like a roadway or a stormwater system, that may go out 30 years. So first I have some major spreadsheets, so I take each item that's in the proposed plan. I figure out what its life is and what the depreciation will be. I also use a factor to incorporate whether it's going to make the work more efficient. So there's an instance of savings then by buying the equipment. There's the fact that if you replace the equipment, your maintenance costs should, in theory, go down. So it's very theoretical the way I compute the numbers, but it gives us some kind of indication whether there's value in keeping the equipment or the improvements in up to date and in good working condition. So it's entirely subjective. There's nothing that's ironclad on how you go about doing this. A lot of agencies or cities would use just the department's best estimate about what kind of operating impact it'll have. In other words, how's it going to affect your operating budget? Are you going to be reducing your maintenance costs? Are you going to have efficiencies where you can have, savings in your operation?
So the negative numbers indicate, as opposed to the numbers that are positive numbers are, some of them like the public facilities, like the 22, 23, or 23, 24, you got 475,000, they're all negative.
Right.
Numbers, but then some places they're positive.
Well, and theoretically, in almost every case, you'd have some kind of break-even point. So it may be that your break-even is not out for 30 years. It may cost you less in the initial years, but then that cost would grow. So there'd be a savings that over those years, you're gonna get less and less efficiency and more maintenance cost. So that's what I'm trying to do, is identify about when it would be to our advantage to replace equipment.
So, for example, this is big numbers, so it's easy to take a look at. But if you were to budget, like on this one, like 21, 22, $1,250,000, and let's say we spent twice as much or half as much, the difference rolls over into the next year?
Well, you'd be, if you spend less, you're going to, in theory, have less maintenance cost. And if there's not some advantage or, additional efficiencies, then you may say that you shouldn't perhaps replace it until some future point in time.
Okay. I do have a question too, another one. Once you've relocated, the project's finished and it's moved, so forth, to the airport, and the property, as you say, will be up for sale, will there be additional costs required for remediation, environmental remediation of the facility there?
Probably not a question I'm capable of answering. I'm sure it would depend somewhat on how any potential buyer would plan to use the property. If they're going to level the current operation altogether, or are they going to rebuild something that is essentially the same
so
type
that's
of facility? So
unknown, more or less. I mean, sometimes you think of the garage and the whole bit. Okay, so there must be some contamination or something.
It's always a possibility that could be something that would be tested for and disclosed. Yes.
Okay. Do have another question too. On the SPD vehicles, so they run like $62,000 a piece, according to your budget here. Do you have an idea of what the vehicle itself costs? And
the vehicles themselves
but then you've got all the communications and cameras and et cetera.
And because the funding is out of our discretionary sales tax fund, there's special provisions in the law that apply to the discretionary sales taxes. So they allow for you to buy police vehicles and to fully equip them. So now these days that we have the computer technology that goes into them, the light bars, that whole package of equipment that's necessary to get them in operation, then that's all eligible for DST. And yes, the basic vehicle, I mean, it's with the police package, the special suspension and durability. So that vehicle is probably, I think, around $33,000. But the additional equipment drives up that average cost. Now, some of them are not the cruisers, they may be the, not ATVs, but the SUVs, yes.
Well, I'm kind of interested in those because I volunteer with the police department, and so if you get some new ones, we might get a handed one that's handed down that's in good shape. Okay. Because I noticed, do you wind up at some point making a comparison of, here's the capital budget for this year, but this is what we actually spent, comparing the budget, capital budget by department or whatever way you want to do it, but to kind of make some adjustments then going forward, or am I making sense?
I'm not sure I understand what your point.
In other words, a comparison of budget versus the actual as far as the capital expenditures.
Okay. We pretty much don't look at that until we start closing out our year-end financial statements to to incorporate all the costs that we know about into the project cost and then compare that to the budget. And it depends on the grants as well. But of course, we have that information in our record as far as what was budgeted for the project and what it was actually ended up costing. But in some projects, you understand too, they could go over multiple years. So some of what we spent in this year, we're finishing up on projects in the previous year. So about the only way you can fairly compare it probably is to take each project that was completed during the year and say, okay, the total budgeted for all those completed projects was X amount as compared to what was actually spent.
One last item. I noticed for your year 1920, because I went on and looked at last year's and whatever stuff, but like funding for 19 and 20 was like 5.4 million, which was discretionary sales tax. And then like this year, the 2021, the discretion is 2.5 million. And so I guess that's why it's called discretionary. But is there a limitation on discretionary?
I mean, the funds are allocated regardless of how we spend them or whether we spend them all this year or, you know, save them up towards future year projects. As long as the purpose of those funds are adhered to, then there's no timing kind of requirement.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
Okay. I have a few questions. I'll start with the first question I want to ask. Does the city, what do they do with all their old equipment? Do they auction it off?
We have an outfit that's called Government Deals. They actually have an auction program that they advertise nationwide, and when we place it with them, it's basically a consignment that we say we've got, you know, we describe the vehicle, they post it on their website and advertise it, gets the word out, and we've done quite well to get people from Texas, Tennessee. I sign off on the titles when they come back in, and I note the addresses are typically even out of state, where they're buying this, in some cases, junk. This last week, I know there was a trailer that had, the tires were good, and that was about the only thing. The trailer was old, it was rusty, it was falling apart, but the guy paid up a good price for just acquiring the tires, and he came from Texas.
So the reason I ask that is not for us to purchase from an auction, is to sell some of our old equipment. So I have heard of Renee Auctions, I believe it is, and many other cities in this area do auctions through them and sell all their old surplus equipment, whether it's computers, old tractor trailers, old police vehicles. And so I was curious, and how much funding have we gotten in the past doing that, or if we're even doing it?
We are consistently doing it. I mean...
and where do those funds go when we receive those funds?
Depends on the department that purchased them. If they were police vehicles and those funds are sold, it comes back into the general fund. If it was an airport piece of equipment or a golf course piece of equipment, then it goes back to that fund that that owned them. So.
I've been through a bunch of these with you, and we replace a lot of vehicles and equipment, and it just seems like it's constant. Do we lease any vehicles? Do we do a fleet lease?
We've looked seriously. We spent quite a bit of time about a year and a half ago with, actually it was Enterprise Rentals. And they really pushed that government agencies could sign up with them. They would supposedly be able to replace the item at at fleet discount prices. And they would even include maintenance of our vehicles. But when we did some detailed studies and said, well, they may say we deliver the vehicle to the garage in Vero Beach, or they may say Pompano Beach or wherever, and it's our task to deliver the vehicle, and of course, if we send a driver down to deliver it, we've got to have somebody else with a vehicle follow them down there. So we've got 2 trips where if we can kind of keep our maintenance local, where we can send the driver to deliver the vehicle and come back. I mean, we tried to price it out and look at what was guaranteed versus what they were assuming that we'd be making, or to our advantage. The numbers did not.
So you're running into costs, having another employee follow an employee to drop off the vehicle for maintenance? I deal with that.
Yes.
So no. Okay. The reason I ask that is because our fleet maintenance is costing us a ton of money. So, and they're the ones maintaining these vehicles that are not lasting very long, I guess. So, and the fleet maintenance is asking for a lot of new equipment also. So, that was just curiosity there. I do have a bunch of questions in reference to the police department requests of ballistic helmets, tasers, ballistic vest rifle plates, ballistic vest rifle, tactical vest rifle plates. That type of equipment requires training. Is there training involved in this? Where's the cost to cover training? And are we expecting, when's the last time any police officer in this town or nearby towns was shot with a rifle and killed? Rifles aren't usually, I mean, these plated vests and stuff, do we have a SWAT team in in the city? And do they have a SWAT vehicle?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so they're the ones that are requesting this equipment.
It's coming
The
from
ballistic plates and stuff like that.
from the police chief, yes.
I don't see us using that equipment. We're asking for a lot of spending there on that equipment, and it's like we're expecting a out of control protest or an Antifa attack or something. This is military equipment we're asking for here, a lot of it. So I have a problem approving a lot of that stuff. We can take a lot of that money and put it somewhere else. On the roads department, the contract to repair sidewalks, this is not for adding new sidewalks, correct? This is just to repair existing sidewalks. The city P&W engineering department says they receive a lot of numerous complaints from the city residents that sidewalks are deteriorating. So this contract for PCC concrete, for 36, this is your estimate for it. But this is strictly to repair existing sidewalks, is that correct?
That's my understanding. It's not like no program to really add sidewalks, no.
Okay, there is nothing right now for adding sidewalks.
No, and I think that the reason it's for repairs is basically to avoid the trip and fall type instances that we hear about just about every month.
So these sidewalks that they're tripping, falling, and the complaints coming in from, are they along our main road corridors, which is a 512 and US 1, which is really not we're not supposed to maintain those, correct? Is it not the county that maintains the road and the state the other road? The sidewalks are in the road
Most of the ones I've seen are in the Indian River Drive along that roadway.
So there's some, and those are recent sidewalks that we just installed recently that are failing on us already?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Okay. I also had a question about the mower. It was on there. I thought you might have had it in 19 and 20 proposed budget. Was it not purchased before? For the leisure services, the $13,000 lawnmower for 50-inch lawnmower. Or 52-inch, I guess it is. Well, didn't we have that in the 19-20 proposed capital improvement?
There's several mowers that they have, or that they operate, and I think this particular one was actually replacing one that's been out of service.
How many mowers are we using in the golf course? Is this for just the golf course or all the parks?
I'm not equipped to answer those kind of details. I don't know.
Because I see the ones they use in the parks. I don't see those being $13,000 mowers. So I'm thinking maybe this is something for the golf course. I did have questions about the fixing of the canals and restoring the canal side bottoms of Collier Creek, Elk Camp Canal to their original contour. That's a huge task. I doubt we'll ever get it to the original contours or side slopes. Who would be responsible for doing that work? Is that going to be a advertised RFP, request for the work to repair these canals, all this stormwater work on these failing canals? Who's going to be doing the work? Is that going to be done in-house?
I'm not privy to the decisions made on that at this point. I know they were, partly was the stormwater master plan was a factor, as well as the.
So I would assume that that project already has a proposed design from when they did that subdivision, right? Or no?
That's something I'm not aware of. I don't know.
A profile of what they proposed how the side slopes and stuff are going to be. How are you going to restore it back to its original contours?
I'm not an engineer, I'm sorry.
All right, I'm just asking those questions. I mean, we're spending a lot of money repairing these canals, and honestly, I don't think the work that we're doing ourselves is done right. We're cutting these grooves in these canals and making them worse, little by little. And yes, eventually you're taking the fill that falls into these canals, which is our fill that's falling in, and you're hauling it off somewhere else. So, are some of these Ocean Cove, isn't that a pretty new project? That Ocean Cove's repair of, they say, is failing there also? Are any of these failing because of the design from the engineers, the previous design? I mean, why are we taking on all this cost to fix these canals? Seawalls, recapping. It's almost like it shouldn't be a cost to us.
I can't answer that.
You're not answering a lot of things for me
Well,
tonight.
I'm not, I'm the finance guy. I put the numbers together based on
I think if there's going to be questions, if we're allowed to ask questions during these capital improvement budget reviews, and it's questions to the airport, the planning, or the fleet maintenance, maybe them individuals need to come to these meetings. Because I can't see voting on this tonight without having a lot of answers. I'm not going to just swallow this anymore and just say, okay.
No, if I could comment on that, I mean, I think the function of the planning board is to look at the overall big picture. When you start getting into details,
and approve this budget. We're looking to recommend approval of this budget to City Council. And there's a lot of things on here that have been on here in the past that were already approved for the budget, and they just keep moving on. So, anyhow, that was all the questions I have. So I guess that ends this presentation and our questions and answers. Does the public have any questions in reference to the capital improvement program?
I'm going to have one more.
Okay, I'll open it up again for discussion with the commissioners. One more question.
It has to do with the public facilities compound. I didn't quite understand the addition this year that you made as far as $1,250,000. For 22, 23, it says for office equipment and office furnishings. I think that's what the breakdown. There's $1,250,000 for fiscal year 22, 23.
Okay, right.
$1,250,000. And I'm assuming a lot of that sort of things will be moving over to that building from where we are now, I would think. Although I know you need some new stuff, new furniture and things like that, I understand. But I'm trying to look at last year's, the 1920, excuse me, where we had for 19 and 20 was $3,351,000 for that. But we didn't spend that, did we?
But I think the manager and engineer and public facilities director, you know, and the firm that we've got in putting together the design and design to build contract, I think they've taken a closer look at what they scheduled out initially. And the result is needing to allocate more money.
So are you also saying that the construction budget has increased?
The anticipated budget at this point is higher than we first thought, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I will ask one more question since you were allowed to. Currently, our hangars at the airport, are they all leased out?
Currently they are, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And now I have something to add.
Okay, we're still discussing here then.
I just wanted to speak a little bit about the canals because you raised the question of who's responsible for those. Those canals were laid out and designed by general development, all of them. And they weren't done very well. We know that. We know what general development did. They were much better at drawing pictures than they were at actually setting up engineering things that would work in perpetuity. Over the years, there have been efforts to do things, but they were always done as kind of a Band-Aid effect and haphazard here, there, and the other place. And several years ago, we went through a large, I guess the only word is the brouhaha, about the canal that runs along, let's see, when Main Street turns to Wimbrow, in that area. That was one of the areas that they did quite a bit of work, and we went through the entire process of figuring out who owned it, who owned the canal, whose responsibility it was, who would benefit from it, and who should pay for it. And it ended up, it was months and millions. And it basically ended up that the city does indeed own the canals. In fact, much of what appears to be land now that is owned by homeowners is really not. It used to be canal. But I think I agree with you that we haven't been approaching it from the right perspective at all. And I do know that it was not in-house work that was done for that canal. They hired people who knew what they were doing, did a much better job of doing it, did it right. So, and you know from your own experience that when you try to fix something that is old and wasn't done right to begin with, it's always more costly than doing it right in the beginning. But this is what we're stuck with. And I think it's a great idea that we're finally coming up with a long-range plan to take care of this, because it is our major, unless we were to invest in stormwater sewer plan that for the whole city, this is what we've got. We'll never pay for a stormwater sewer plan.
I have something too in the canals First of all, I really think that the Water Management District should be pitching in some of the money to do this. And second of all, does this budget that you have in here to do all this, does that include anybody who went out and surveyed the actual bottom of the canal to see what the canal bottom looks like and how we're going to restore it back to a normal slope? I'm with Mr. Reyes. I don't know how you're going to restore something if you don't know what's down there to begin with. So, I mean, I know you can't answer that, Mr. Kilgore. I know you can't, but it just seems like there's something missing here. So,
My main concern was that it does properly get designed, that we get to see some sections of what they proposed, and that the contractor does the job right. Not that, I don't think we should try to take on those kind of tasks in-house. It's a huge project, so, and I don't think we're qualified in-house to do it. So that was it, and I was around for all that Wimbrow Canal stuff, and yeah, at that time, the homeowners were gonna have to pay for a portion of that. I think they still own to the center line of that canal, don't they?
They did not have to pay for any of it.
They should get tax breaks on that. Anyhow, okay, and no further discussion? Questions?
One last one, honestly.
Okay.
When is this scheduled to go before council?
The entire budget, including the capital program, will be presented in a workshop setting on August 26th.
This month?
They actually have the first hearing on the budget and approval of the capital program on September 14th.
Okay. Just trying to figure out who'd be here.
Okay, no further questions from the commissioners?
Thank you. No.
Okay, I will open it up for the public for questions. Anybody from the public have questions in reference to the review of the capital improvement program? Anybody in Zoom world?
There is no one on Zoom.
Thank you. Hearing none, we'll close the public input. Looking for a motion.
Trying to figure out where to go with this. Would this be acceptable? Recommend a motion to recommend proposed capital improvement program to the city council with the understanding that they would review our comments and make some modifications on their own.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Kizzelbosh,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
No.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Mr. Eugen,
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez.
Yes.
Okay, the votes are 5 ayes and 1 nay. Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is commissioner matters. No. Commissioners?
No, we're fine.
Anybody?
No.
Nope.
City attorney matters.
Nothing from me, Mr. Chair.
Staff matters? Okay, I'll add one thing. Make a note that Mr. Roth did not show for the meeting tonight. I guess that's already noted. She's not here, so I'm just making sure she can see that he did not show. Okay, nothing further. I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Meeting is adjourned.